Have you ever seen an organizational flow chart for a business? Now, it doesn't sound very exciting, but it's fascinating when you can actually see who's in charge of what. And then how do they delegate? And you got this person at the top, and then there's the president, here's all these vice presidents, or there's the CEO, and then there's the CFO and the COO, and all these different acronyms, and lines of authority and chains of command, and all these kinds of things. Makes me think of like movies when the aliens come, and they always say, "Take me to your leader." Well, do we have an organizational flow chart? Who's the leader? Who's running the show here? That's an important question. And the irony when it comes to, or the challenge when it comes to the church, is there's all kinds of different ecclesiologies, all kinds of different ways that churches are organized. Is it congregational? Is it Presbyterian? Is it Episcopal? Those are not just denominational names. Those are describing organizations. Is it through a presbytery? Okay. Is it through some kind of, again, vertical, horizontal, Catholic magisterium, congregational base among various, anyway, there's a whole thing to study there. But in section 107, we get to study the Lord's version for his restored church. And it's a wild organizational chart. As I've said before, Latter-day Saints are a proving of contraries from the other kinds of churches that exist. As I said to a Catholic and Protestant friend at divinity school, if you two got married and had a kid, it would be me. Because we'll embrace the hierarchy of Catholicism and combine it with the democracy of Protestantism. How's that? Now, what does that look like on a flow chart? You tell me. Because the hierarchy of Catholicism is vertical, but the democracy of Protestantism is horizontal. Combine the two, what do we have? Like a diagonal organizational chart? I don't know. But notice these verses in section 107. Start in verse 22. Of the Melchizedek priesthood, 3 presiding high priests, chosen by the body, appointed and ordained to that office, and upheld by the confidence, faith, and prayer of the church, form a quorum of the presidency of the church. Now here we have it clearly defined. There's the first presidency of the church. We have 3 presiding high priests. I do love the language, by the way. How do we uphold them? What does it mean to sustain the prophets? Well, we offer them our confidence, our faith, and our prayers. Confidence seems to be horizontal I have confidence in you. I believe in you, President Nelson. I believe in you, President Oakes. I believe in you, President Irene. You can do this. But it's not just confidence in them, which is easy to come by because they're all geniuses. But more importantly, it's my vertical faith in God. God can communicate with them. I believe in a God of revelation to these great presiding high priests. So confidence in them, faith in God. And then since there's still humanity here, we don't believe in prophetic infallibility. So what else do we need? We need prayers. In fact, they need prayers. They're asking for them from us. Yes, I have confidence in you, First Presidency. Yes, I have faith that God will direct you. And I will pray that that is the case. That's how I'll sustain you. That's how I uphold you. Well, let's go back to our organizational chart. There we have top. We have the First Presidency of the church. But then the next 2 verses, 23 and 24, the 12 traveling counselors are called to be the 12 apostles. Or, great definition here, special witnesses of the name of Christ in all the world, thus differing from other officers in the church in the duties of their calling. And they form a quorum equal in authority and power to the 3 presidents previously mentioned. Now, the first verse there is describing the quorum of the 12. Remember the Zion's Camp March. And they weren't there to redeem Zion physically. They were there to redeem Zion spiritually. And part of that was identifying people that were willing to give their all for the building of Zion, to the point of laying their lives on the line. It was from that group that the original Quorum of the 12 Apostles was called. Okay? Believe me, Zion's Camp, it was not a failed military expedition. It accomplished the higher and holier goal that God had in mind. But that quorum, what does he say at the end there? This group of special witnesses of the name of Christ in all the world. Again, the importance of a name. Their witness going everywhere, but where do they fit in the chart? This says they are equal in authority and power to the First Presidency. So we'd put the group of 3 over here, and then we put the group of 12 horizontally next to it, equal in authority? Interesting. That's not how I picture things. Well, keep reading. 25 and 26, the 70 are also called to preach the gospel and to be especial witnesses unto the Gentiles and in all the world, thus differing from other officers in the church in the duties of their calling. And they form a quorum equal in authority to that of the 12 special witnesses or apostles just named. Again, let's divide that in half. First half, who are these 70? Later in this revelation, he'll even say, you can multiply the number of 70 as much as the kingdom requires, as the church continues to grow. So yes, we have a first quorum and a second quorum and a third and fourth and fifth and sixth and on to the teens. Lots of quorums of 70. That's where area 70s come in. But to see the general authority 70s, those are on, they form a quorum that is equal in authority to the 12, which was equal in authority to the First Presidency. This is a wild horizontal organizational chart. And again, but that's not how it works, right? The First Presidency always has authority. Oh, the 70 always defer to the Quorum of the 12, and the Quorum of the 12 always defer to the First Presidency. So how is this equal in authority? Well, do you remember when Joseph Smith dies and the First Presidency is dissolved? Who's in charge of the church? The Quorum of the 12 apostles. Have we lost authority? Are we at a lower level? No. We're minus a quorum, but the quorum that is in charge now was always on equal authority as the quorum that was presiding previously. Interesting historically. But then notice what else the Doctrine and Covenants adds. Jump ahead a few verses and look at verse 33 and 34. Because this is going to help explain, kind of solve the riddle. Because if you have 3 quorums that are all equal, what if they're all headed in different directions? Can you imagine giving every passenger in a car a steering wheel of their own that actually works? Boy, if you don't get on the same page, is everyone in charge of a single wheel? And then pretty soon you're dismembering the vehicle? We got some potential problems there. We have to figure out, how do you work among equal partners? Well, look at verse 33 and 34. The 12 are a traveling presiding high council to officiate in the name of the Lord, and here's the phrase, under the direction of the presidency of the church, agreeable to the institution of heaven, to build up the church and regulate all the affairs of the same in all nations, first under the Gentiles, secondly under the Jews, and next level, the 70 are to act in the name of the Lord under the direction of the 12, or the traveling high council, in building up the church and regulating all the affairs of the same in all nations, first unto the Gentiles and then to the Jews. So as far as their marching orders, they're very similar on both of those. But did you catch the opposite phrase? We saw repeatedly on the first half a horizontal organizational chart, equal in authority. Now we see a vertical organizational chart under the direction of. And again, how do you combine the two? That's the mystery, but that's the goal. And when I look at the presiding quorums of the church and the deference paid, but also the equality shown, there seems to be no pride from above or pride from below as I see these members, these general authorities work together. Now, of course, they're still human. And there's going to be rough edges that God is going to polish off of us all. But to see the ideal portrayed here in section 107, always treat each other as equal, but let's have one steering wheel. Let's come together and have presiding with under the authority of, and yet scattered revelation, everyone giving their best counsel. Remember, we saw that when we talked about the First Presidency revelations ago, a couple months ago, or a couple weeks ago. There's this sense of Give your best advice, but stand in the office you've been appointed. You're equal partners as far as counseling one with another. But if the presiding authority is presiding well, assuring everyone of their equal standing and their equal importance in contributing to the discussion, then once the decision is made by the presiding authority, there is unanimity that has entered in along the way. That's powerful presiding, the way it's supposed to work. Okay? In fact, in some ways, once we understand that, then family organizational charts will start to make a little more sense. I've spoken to a lot of sisters that are still frustrated that the word preside still remains in the proclamation to the world on the family. Others are very grateful for that word and wish their husbands would live up to it a little bit more clearly. Again, there's a Goldilocks zone there too. We don't want unrighteous dominion, but we do want righteous leadership. So don't go too hot, don't go too cold. Find the way to do it. And how does the proclamation say it? It's fascinating. It says that fathers are meant to preside in righteousness. Temple ceiling language has some similar structure. But the proclamation also uses the phrase that husbands and wives are meant to be equal partners. I have heard some people complain about the proclamation saying those two are mutually exclusive. How can they be equal partners when there's any sense of presiding over? Well, ask section 107 of the Doctrine Covenants. To me, it drops a hint that the proclamation and this revelation come from the same source. A God who is trying to help us think outside the box or outside the chart. One who is trying to help us prove contraries and learn how to balance hierarchy and democracy, authority and equality, Catholicism and Protestantism, take your pick, vertical, horizontal. There's the cross, and we have to find where they meet. So any of you that are in positions of presiding, and any of you who are being presided over, if you are under the direction of someone else, I pray that that someone else holds to the equal in authority or the equal partnership. Because if both parties hold on to their phrase, if you're the head of the hierarchy, then your phrase should be equal in authority. Okay, that's what I'm always going to have to keep in mind. If I am not in the position of authority, then what phrase do I need to hold on to? Under the direction of. And honestly, if the other person can treat me with greater equality, then I'm more than willing to be able to be under their direction. I feel seen, I feel heard. So wherever we happen to be in the church organizational chart or the family organizational chart, if both parties will do it right, we will be one heart and one mind. We will dwell in righteousness, and there will be no poor among us. We will be Zion. Zion church, Zion couple, Zion family, Zion people. That is what God is asking us all to become.